Hello, everyone. This is Mike Grandinetti. I'm Chief Marketing and Corporate Strategy Officer at Reduxio. We're based in San Francisco with our development operations in Tel Aviv, Israel. I'm also Global Professor of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Hult International School of Business. I'd like to extend a special welcome to the VMware user group community. Reduxio has been a very active sponsor and a regular speaker, exhibitor, and participant at VMUG events nationwide since our launch at VMworld in 2015, where we were named a Best of VMworld company. There's also almost 100% correlation between Reduxio customers and VMware customers, so we think that we have some unique insights to share with you. So today's topic centers around ransomware, and we thought that the cover slide, "Sit back and relax," would be a bit provocative because most people don't sit back and relax when they're attacked by ransomware. They are engaged in a panic dance. And what we'd like to try to describe to you today through our three subject matter experts is how you as a vSphere administrator can recover virtual machines to any second, both in general, but of course specifically in the context of a ransom attack. There's no question that this topic is timely for those of you who pay attention to such things. You may have noted that this past weekend over the 4-day Thanksgiving holiday here in the U.S., the San Francisco Metropolitan Transport Authority's light rail system suffered a ransom attack. It happened on Sunday, and the attack has still not been mitigated. And at this point in time, anybody in the San Francisco region is able to ride the light rail system for free, and clearly something that the MTA is looking to address as quickly as possible. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has been increasingly vocal about the frequency and the severity of ransomware attacks. Numbers that they have shared recently indicate at least 4,000 attacks a day and growing exponentially. And just to put some economic boundaries around it, in the last data that I've seen, over $200 million was paid to cyber attackers around ransomware attack just in Q1 of 2016 alone. So what I'd like to do now is very quickly describe the background of our three subject matter experts. The first two are guest speakers. John Bambenek is a globally renowned IT security expert and cybercrime consultant. He's got over 40,000 Twitter followers paying attention to his thoughts and recommendations on how to combat cybercrime. He is a member of the legendary Operation Tovar Task Force that is a very storied narrative that we're going to be getting into, and he participated along with the FBI, the United States Department of Justice, and Interpol in an activity that took down CryptoLocker, and we'll cover that in some detail in a moment or two. Again, he's also a volunteer with the Internet Storm Center, and we'll dig into what that entails. Second, we're lucky enough to have Michael Martell. Michael has a 30-year career as an IT operations and infrastructure manager, most notably over the last 20-plus years with the Dingley Press, one of the largest catalog printers in the United States, where he serves as systems manager. Previously, Michael was engaged in leading IT infrastructure and operations at Blue Cross and Blue Shield. He is a noted virtualization expert both around VMware and Microsoft. And what I will do as moderator is conduct a fireside chat with each one in turn. And then I'm going to turn over the microphone to my distinguished colleague, Jacob Cherian. Jacob is VP of Product and Product Strategy at Reduxio Systems. Jacob previously was a distinguished engineer at Dell, where he spent a significant amount of time guiding their storage strategy. Jacob is the owner of 50 patents, 30 of which were granted and 20 which are pending in the storage space. And he will be taking people through an overview of the Reduxio technology that allows us to allow VMware vSphere administrators to recover VMs to any second. So welcome, everyone. And John, we're going to start with you. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Maybe a quick way to start off with just tell us a little bit more about yourself. What led you to become so focused on IC security and cybercrime, and how do you spend your days these days with this just onslaught of cyber hacks that we see in the paper and on the news each day?
Sure. Well, I guess I kind of got started in the industry by accident. I trained as a military officer. They paid for college. I injured my knees and all of a sudden needed a new career I hadn't planned for, and it was the tail end of the dot-com boom era. I had done a lot of IT stuff. It was a subject of my military research, so very quickly went to Ernst & Young doing IT security for their clients. And then 17 years later, here I am. As you mentioned, some of my background, I also teach at the University of Illinois in computer science, specifically in cybersecurity. So I've spent my entire career focused mostly on the criminal aspects of cybersecurity, of investigations, as opposed to the APT nation-state espionage sort of thing. So spend a fair bit of my time, traveling to various countries, helping friendly foreign governments to get investigations. As many people know, it's a multi-jurisdictional issue. So I'm actually called in from Lyon, France at the moment. So it's evening here. So that's a bit of a high level of my background.
Okay, and when you talk about, focusing on the criminal aspects, maybe we'll start with your role with Operation Tovar in that task force. It seems like such an extraordinary story. I would imagine at some point Hollywood would option it for a movie. I'd love to hear your perspective from the inside.
It started with, I live in a somewhat rural county in central Illinois, and a local government entity, a housing authority, had come to me. They lost their files in a ransomware attack. I actually tried to turn down the business, saying, well, if you don't got backup, I can charge you and bill you hours, but I'm not going to be able to recover your data. And it turned out to be really, really well-written ransomware, had a lot of interesting technological aspects. And from there, we spawned a group of over a dozen countries, 140 some odd security experts, working over the course of 8 months, that eventually not only eliminated the threat, we recovered the encryption key. So anybody who lost their files to this was able to recover their files. And there's an indictment of the operator and a $3 million bounty. But he is still at large in the Russian Federation. So, and he knows we're looking. So the odds of us grabbing him, dependent on him making a mistake of leaving Russia to some place where we can grab him.
Okay. And if my research serves me, I guess about $3 million in ransom were paid out around that CryptoLocker attack specifically before you were able to recover the keys?
From Bitcoin, primarily, yeah. There's no real way to measure because they actually used Green Dot in a lot of prepaid cards, so we didn't really have a good way of tracking those. But in terms of Bitcoin payments, yeah, it was in the millions easily, probably tens of millions by the time it was said and done. I want to say the Department of Justice estimated it in under 100 million, but upwards in the high 70s or so.
Wow. And what lessons can you share with our audience in terms of what you learned in that attack? What were some of the things that you might suggest to our audience to take into consideration?
Well, the first thing is these kind of prosecutions and global efforts are very hard to produce results. We got lucky to get the encryption keys, but if you're an enterprise, could you deal with months without your data, or a year or 2 years? Most of these prosecutions are measured in years, even months. But it takes an immense amount of effort of a lot of people. So there's only so much that we can tackle. I've been asked to do dozens of things, and I can focus on barely keep up with the 6 cases that I've got on my plate. So, but there's a lot of difficulty of actually getting real criminal results, which is why this kind of stuff keeps growing. They can operate with a sense of impunity, knowing they're really not ever going to be prosecuted as long as they obey a certain subset of criminal rules, right? And there's real money on the table, right? There's always been crime with the human species. We just find new ways to steal money, but we've been stealing since the beginning. But I think one of the key things, right, is the lesson I gave this housing authority is, if you had backup somewhere, you had some backup strategy, you could have at least recovered your data on a timely basis. You know, there's certainly lessons learned of not clicking on email-based, suspicious email attachments and web-based exploit kits and things of that sort. But, you know, they continue to happen. Security awareness is a very important thing to enculturate. But all it is one person making a mistake. You know, they're working a double shift and they were tired, right? At the San Francisco Transportation Authority, you know, somebody clicked on the wrong thing and now it's gone through the network. Human beings make mistakes. You try to prevent it. You put in all the tools you can. You do the best you can with technologies. But I don't have a tool that I can recommend anybody to say, you install this, you put this on your network, it's going to stop ransomware. We just don't have anything yet. We've been working on the problem for years, and it's still here with us. So the key is what we've been saying for 20 years is disaster recovery planning, business continuity. When bad things happen, putting things in place to make sure that you can recover quickly, you know, in hours, if not minutes, and not days, which is what it looks like, or weeks, which we're going to see in the San Francisco.
Right, absolutely. So, John, let's talk a little bit about the Internet Storm Center. You got to love the name of the organization, right? Part of the SANS Technology Institute. Can you just describe a little bit about the mandate of the Internet Storm Center and your role there?
Sure. It's all volunteer-based effort as part of SANS. We have a globally distributed set of sensors, so we have very good visibility into what network traffic looks like generally. So the idea of a storm center we came up with it 12 years ago, was to get an idea of create an internet weather report. Where are the attacks coming? So we could say, hey, you know, we've seen a huge uptick on attacks on a SQL server or web servers. Why, you know, and provide some guidance to people. A lot of the difficulty organizations have is there may be problems with Microsoft or Oracle or pick whatever technology suite, and you're at the whims of them to give a patch or give you some guidance. We try to give some mitigation tips when we discover things, saying if you do X, Y, and Z, you're not 100%, but maybe you're 95% while you're waiting for a patch. So it's the idea of creating, you know, for IT professionals, you know, small to medium especially, who can't afford a lot of resources or whiz-bang security hardware. You know, here's some guidance: install this GPO, disable this service, do whatever, so that you can protect your organizations.
Okay. And since we're speaking to the VMware user group community, right, people that use VMware in their daily IT operations, are any specific attack vectors or vulnerabilities that you're aware of, or any specific insights you can share with our listeners today around technology that they have all deployed in their IT environments?
So, yeah, I guess in terms of threats to VMware generally, it's kind of an interesting space. There's a lot of malware detects that detects, hey, I'm in a virtualized environment, and then it kind of walks away. The only real technology and tools that are directed towards virtualized environments are things that are explicitly trying to do escapes to get at the host, you know, because that's where you get real control over an environment. You get on the host, you've basically got everything. You know, so certainly a lot of attacks of that sort, and you know, it's important to not expose, as much as that's possible, not expose, you know, host access to the internet at large. You know, make people VPN in, or however your organization can abstract that away from the internet. Generally provides you some layer of protection, but there's still stuff that can run on a virtualized environment, escape, and create damage. We have the closest thing to, say, a ransomware attack on a virtualized environment was on AWS, which not VMware specific, but as an idea of things that could happen. There was a company called CodeSpaces. Somebody got into their cloud environment, said, give me a bunch of money or I'm going to read all your code. They were a code repository company like GitHub. They didn't pay the ransom. The attackers basically deleted all of the code repositories. Well, game, set, match. The company closed down the next day because all of its assets were destroyed. Had nothing couldn't recover anything. So there certainly is some precedent for ransom attacks against virtualized environments. So certainly people need to be prepared and aware of that.
Okay. So you've been observing the evolution of cybercrime over decades. You've got some fascinating vantage points. You went right into the darkest part of it with Operation Tovar. You've been observing it from your vantage point at the Internet Storm Center. Based on that, what can you potentially predict? What can we expect? Right, we're seeing the aggressiveness, the severity of these ransom attacks increasing. We're seeing them targeting now backups to make it that much more difficult to recover. Where do you think we go from here, and what do our listeners need to be thinking about to continue to try, if possible, to stay at least a half a step ahead of the bad guys?
Mm-hmm. Well, certainly, as part of the criminal ecosystem, ransomware is now one of the primary things that's being delivered. Right? We tend to think of cybercrime as banking fraud, credit card fraud, and those things are still out there. But the dollars that people can steal, even if you steal 70 million credit cards, the black market value of that is it's good payday, but you can't move 70 million credit cards anymore. You can get $100,000 in a ransomware attack on a transportation authority. So a lot of the commodity malware being distributed is ransomware, usually Lockheed, but there are others. So there's going to be a lot of growth in that because there's real money being lost, right? Versus, hey, I've got to figure out a way to sell credit cards. I've got to get enough of them or breach a major retailer versus ransomware. I get grandma who's upset that she lost her grandkid's picture and will pony up $300, or a transportation authority or a hospital that needs to get access to that stuff. And when you're talking about that kind of targeting, they're very much, hey, we need to make sure we get backups. We've got to get everything or they're not going to pay. So they spent some real time. It's basically kind of the digital equivalent of, the old mob movies where you got a couple of mafioso walk into a grocery store. Hey, nice store you got here. Shame anything happens to it, pay me some money, right? It's the digital equivalent of that, and that's the world we're in.
Okay. So in a moment or two, we'll turn over and we'll I'll start to talk to Michael Martell. But I think you mentioned something earlier. Here you are. You're an expert. This is your life's work. And as you said, right, trying to keep up with anything more than 5 or 6 accounts at once is enough to make your head explode, right? And again, because this is a sort of a transaction-based crime, and we are targeting very small businesses in general, or relatively unsophisticated businesses, how does an organization that doesn't have the resources that large organizations do have a prayer of preventing this from happening? Right. I mean, we saw during this unique election season, the NSA was hacked, right? And if the NSA can't defend their own perimeter, then the question is, can anyone? So there's a lot of best practices that are recommended. There's a tremendous amount of tools and technology out there. But how does a small organization even have a chance of keeping people out, if at all?
Well, it's really hard, right? There's tools you can buy. You can do security awareness training, but if you're a small business running a T-shirt printing company and the owner is making maybe $80,000 a year, are they going to invest and have the money to invest $10,000, $20,000 in a backup solution? No, it's preposterous to even think that, and that's something our industry has a big problem with. Is how do we, I try as best as I can to provide tools to small, medium business, but they have to be aware of them, and they have to have some aptitude to implement them. There are people running businesses that are experts in construction or HVAC repair. They don't need to be experts in IT security. So I don't know if there really is a good solution of just trying to create high-quality intelligence that hopefully can be integrated into tools targeted at that vertical to help protect them.
Okay. So, John, I think, you're obviously somewhat familiar with Reduxio, and the unique approach that we've taken, right? And so just from your perspective as a cybercrime consultant and an IT security expert, right, one of the things we've attempted to do is provide a very rapid recovery mechanism, right, to allow our users to resume operations very quickly, right, take very granular snapshots, if you will, just continuous snapshots down to the second, to both minimize data loss and minimize downtime, right, to really optimize RPOs and RTOs. Is there, what can you say about the Reduxio approach to being at least a part of an overall mitigation strategy?
Well, like I said, I think the recovery time is the big variable, right? You could spend a lot of money on security solutions, obviously, and get some degree of coverage, but not really accessible to SMBs. But I think the biggest, the numbers we can put to it is what's going on in San Francisco. I want to say their average income from fares is something like $600,000 a day. That they're losing, which is less than, coincidentally, the ransom that's being demanded. So, it's real losses. Now, they may make $600,000 a day, but that doesn't mean, they've got that in cash flow. I mean, they've got salaries they need to make, and there's concerns about their ability to make their own payroll because of this. So, time is money. Downtime, costs things, and eventually, people will ride public transit again in San Francisco, but that's not a issue that most small to medium businesses have. If you can't fulfill an order for 2 months, then they're going to find a competitor who can.
Yeah, absolutely, or substitute. Well, John, this has been very helpful. I know that you're calling in from Lyon and it's late there, but very much appreciate you sharing your time and your thoughts with us. I very much appreciate it. All right, Michael Martell, we're now. Michael, we're gonna transition over to you. Thank you again for taking time out of your day, keeping the Dingley Press's operations up and running today. Michael, you are someone who has been responsible for managing IT ops and infrastructure for over 30 years, right? Any thoughts, comments, reactions to John's commentary?
Very much so. John has some wonderful expertise in the field of actually working directly with the ransomware and everything. I'm at the other end of the spectrum. I'm a working stiff. My job is to keep this company up and running, keep the operations of it from one end to the other smooth and running. We have in manufacturing a lot of what's called just-in-time manufacturing. Each component that we do feeds into the next process, and all of them are scheduled fairly tightly. So we have to make certain that things are, more than anything else, reliable in operations. And where John was talking a little about what tools or what kinds of attacks happen to your virtualized environment, what we stepped over was what's running in your virtualized environment. Those are PCs, desktops, servers, all of the tools that you have to give people to get their jobs done. And a lot of these are things that we depend on very heavily, and they are all data. So a ransomware attack that hits a data store is a nightmare, because it literally can eliminate not only the data, but the servers that it's running on. It can destroy your virtual infrastructure. And this infrastructure is based on common reference machines. Every virtual machine that you use, you're building a very common platform. If there are any bugs in that, then those are going to get exploited very quickly. So you have to make certain that you can replace or resume using the services that your company depends on in that virtual environment within the tolerance window that your company has that they can do without that particular component.
Okay.
So with the Reduxio system, we literally can replace a virtual machine in a matter of seconds. If a server goes down, if a problem develops and I can't run that virtual machine, I can have that virtual machine running from the last good point of it literally in seconds and let vMotion put it back in place.
And Michael, maybe you can explain how you're able to do that so quickly, because obviously that's not a common metric.
My best description for that really doesn't involve a VMware instance, but involves a production database that we use daily. We have 15 machines that assemble catalogs. We produce 15 million mail order catalogs a week from the building I'm sitting in. If you've got 6 catalogs at home, there's a good chance that one of them came out of the building I'm sitting in.
Yeah.
To do all of that, we have to keep track of the operations of 4 large presses, 2 12-hour shifts for each press for each day, 15 machines that assemble catalogs, 3 8-hour shifts for that, and 2 machines which address, bundle, and mail those catalogs, again, another 3 shifts a day. And we track all of the production hours that are used for any of these catalogs or for grouping all of them so that we know how much we're spending to produce the catalogs and whether we're profitable or not based on that.
Yeah.
So we have an employee whose job basically is to sit down with a database every day and enter all of the production operations from all of the production across all these machines for the previous day. She called me about 2 o'clock in the afternoon and said, Mike, the counts database just blew up. And I logged out of it and logged back in and tried again, and it gave me the same error. I went on that with her. We looked at the database. We found the error in the database. We figured out that it had been about 15 minutes that we were on the phone, and it was 2 to 3 minutes from the first problem to when she called me. So we said, okay, 20 minutes. I go to the Reduxio system, which is providing the volume that my file server is providing as shares for the company. Take that volume, went back 20 minutes, made a clone of it, attached it to the server, went onto the server, brought it online, navigate down the tree on that one that's identical, find the database, restore it, or copy it from there to the live database, had her start it up. Everything is working. We're missing 2 records of her data entry.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of just giving someone back last night's backup or the original file so they can start over again. It's a matter of preserving every bit of the work that she had done for an entire 6 out of her 8-hour day already. All of the work she had done came back. If we'd gone back 19 minutes and 30 seconds, she'd have been on the current record.
Right.
And it literally took longer to describe that than it did to do it. The Reduxio has the ability to keep track of every change made to the data on the server and to go back to any point in time as far as you have told it to keep those records and get the data exactly as it existed at that time.
Yeah.
Now,
and Michael, although you use the database, I'm sorry to interrupt, although you use the database as an example, I know that you've had numerous experiences where you've done this with virtual machines as well.
I've done this with virtual machines. I've done this with databases. I've done this with other files, Excel files with an autosave. Any data that's written to the Reduxio system is available as far back as I would go in history for it at a 1-second interval.
Yeah.
What that provides to me is a different type of ROI. ROI can be measured by the financial people in terms of the dollars and cents that you've spent on something and what it does for you. But the real return on the investment is returning the investment in time and effort that my users have made to get all of this work done, so that I can not only give them back the file, I can give them back the work that they've done. And that makes a difference to all of my users.
Well, Michael, I really appreciate the point, right? And this, I'd love to maybe explore a little bit about what we covered in preparation for our discussion, right? So here you are, you're a manufacturing operation, right? So mission critical, 24/7, huge production pressure to get, 15 million catalogs out the door. And as you stated, right, your network is under constant attack. And yet,
yes,
over the last 7 years, you really haven't had anyone penetrate your network. And as you described it, a lot of it, as you said, comes down to user education, right? It just sounds like you've created an extraordinarily collaborative culture where there's a lot of empathy for keeping your users productive and making sure they don't lose data. And they, in turn, seem to do everything they can to sort of support you in your efforts to protect the company's network, IT infrastructure. So can you talk about what you've done there culturally? Because it's an extraordinary story.
Yeah. We quite simply, on about a monthly basis, more often if it's warranted, less often if things have been quiet, we do an email across the company that describes the most recent and current threats, that identifies how to spot that some of these things are threats. If we have examples, we show you where to move the cursor and float it over the link so that the link actually shows where it's going instead of where it says it's going, and to be able to spot the different types of things and language and such that's used. We pass that to everyone in the company. A lot of the supervisors who work with manufacturing employees print copies of it and give it to the employees. We have a lot of immigrant folks here from Somalia. Their way home to the other parts of their family is a computer and browser. So they're not necessarily the most sophisticated users as well, but they need this, they rely on it. So the more we can help them be better users at home, the better they are when they get to work. But everybody's using one level of technology or another with this, so we make this available to everyone. The big thing we do is anybody who spots a ransomware or a malware or a phishing attack and forwards it to us in IT, we do an email to the whole company identifying that threat, pointing out, what about it, tipped them off that it was a threat and everything and how to look for it, and congratulating the person that found it. Those people get attaboys from other people within the company, and they literally compete to be the next one to have found something. Recognition for looking at it, paying attention, and doing a good job. And any emails that I don't have something like that to do, I congratulate people as a whole saying, we've gone this long because you guys have kept your eyes open and never done anything wrong with the emails or things like that, and always checked with us first if you had any questions at all. And Kaspersky gives me little 6-month free antivirus cards, and those go out as rewards to the people who spot something. But we literally have a culture that practically competes to be the next one to spot a threat. And anytime they see something that looks questionable, they contact us in IT to ask. And that makes all the difference in the world. There is no tool you can put out there that will keep everything safe and spot everything that comes in, especially the attacks on the email and things like that. But your users see every one of them. And if they know what to look for, And to tell you about it or to ask you about it, you have the best defense you can have.
That's great, Michael.
What
now,
we have concentrated on.
Now, we talked a little bit earlier about, new attack vectors. What are some of the new attack vectors that you're seeing from your vantage point today? And, when do they become significant enough that you realize that you've got to go back out now and educate your user community on a new class of attack?
The ones that the user community sees tend to be the phishing and spear phishing attacks. The ones that send an email with something attached to it that says, Eric wanted you to see this. Eric being the company president.
Right.
People scan for emails and pick up addresses in them, or they go out and read the websites or things like that. They look for corporate officer names or things, and they use them in the attacks. They look for incoming emails, and they phrase something very much like the incoming emails. We have a reasonably large group of customers who does a lot back and forth with us, by email. So we have to watch that very carefully. The other thing.
And Michael, what about you? What about like from your perspective? I'm sorry.
That's
what about from your perspective now? Not from the user perspective, but from your specific perspective. What are the attack vectors that you are seeing from your vantage point, or that your IT team is seeing?
The FTP server gets someone trying to log in as root or admin roughly every 3 seconds.
Wow.
And it has since the day it was put up.
Wow.
And I have done a great deal of geo-blocking, where I have blocked areas. We don't have a lot of customers in Chechnya. We don't have a lot in China or Korea, such. So I have those areas blocked. But a lot of the threats now are coming from addresses from Google or from Amazon, where people spin up an instance, spin up a VDI machine, use that for their attacks, and drop it. And those may be address ranges that you don't want to block because you may have customers using them. You may be using them yourselves. But those are the type that you get attacks from. The other thing is anything that has a web interface for a user to log in on. We will get users who attempt to log in to an interface that lets us see what's happening on the presses, and they will try and log in as ASP.NET or SQL agent or the Kerberos management string or Exchange admin or other known built-in addresses or common addresses in a Microsoft product. And they will try and log in with those with a password and run that until they lock it out. And those, unfortunately, are a vector that's very difficult to secure, other than making certain that there's only a specific group of users who can specifically log in. But that's an attack vector that you see quite often. We don't have a great deal exposed. We use GoToMyPC, which basically crosses the streams, so to speak. You connect to a server where your device has gone as an outgoing client and connect the streams at the server to communicate. So it's an outgoing connection. It's a little harder to get in through.
All right.
But
Michael, listen, just in the interest of time.
Spend a lot of time working on those.
Well, it sounds as if, again, with the limited resources you've had, you've really optimized your defenses in a way that is actually pretty inspirational. So thank you so much for taking time. Just ask if you could stay for the Q&A, but at this point I'm going to now transition over to Jacob. I'm going to turn the floor over to him, and he's going to spend a little bit of time talking through Reduxio's unique architecture. Okay? Jacob, the floor is yours.
Yep. So you heard from Michael about how he uses the Reduxio solution to recover data at the grand level in 1 second. So I want to tell you what the solution is. We're an enterprise flash storage solution. And when we think of enterprise flash solution, this is the value that we talk about. We talk about the ability to recover at any second. We make flash affordable so that you can use this product across all your applications, so you don't have to decide which of your applications need to get flash storage. And the last part is how we basically have designed the system to eliminate the complexity in your storage infrastructure. So let's go through each one of these. I'll start with the recovery to any second, which is probably the most important thing that we've talked to throughout this conversation. If you think of the history of data recovery, in the past, I would say 30 to 40 years, we started with backup, right? And the problem with backup was the RPO and RTO was not very good. Then in around 92, a new feature was created called snapshots. And snapshots was a feature that was initially developed by the company called StorageTech, which then was popularized by NetApp because it was added to every array. Now, since then, there's actually been very little change in the data recovery services that are available on primary storage systems like ours till Reduxio introduced backdating. And with backdating, what you can do is you can actually go back in time at the granularity of 1 second on any volume in your system. And this is something that Mike will talk about on how he uses this for recovering VMs and databases. Now, let's look at backdating in a little bit more of detail. So backdating is something that you don't need to set up. Unlike snapshots, this is not something you need to set up. This is something that is always configured for every volume on the system. This basically provides automatic consistency across all your volumes, so you don't have to deal with consistency group anymore. And this basically introduces no performance impact because the system is designed to have backdating enabled at all times and provide the recovery at the granularity of 1 second. Now, there is a problem with providing recovery at the granularity of 1 second forever, and which is you need infinite amount of space. And to solve that problem, what we do is we basically have the system configured with default policies for volume so that as data ages, we basically thin out the amount of historical information we keep to provide that recovery. So after, let's say, 8 hours, we might reduce the amount of data that we keep so that you get every recovery at the granularity of every hour. And past that point, it might go to every day, every week, every month, up to a maximum retention policy that is defined by for the volume as the maximum retention for any piece of data. Okay. If I look into what is special about backdating, it is the way backdating is implemented that makes it special. Now, if you think of snapshots, if you think of most systems that you're familiar with, and think of how many recovery points does snapshots provide, most systems will probably give you about 10,000 snapshots. If you think of how often you can take a snapshot, it's probably 1 every 15 minutes, 1 every hour, depending upon the number of volumes. You might not be able to get every 15 minutes or every 5 minutes. You might have to do even larger RPOs because you just don't have the number of snapshots you need to cover all the data you have. With backdating, you just don't have this problem because you always get 1 second recovery across all your volumes. Now, just in comparison, if you think of 8 hours and 1,000 volumes, this is the equivalent of about 35 million snapshots that we're able to keep. And so how do we do this, right? So obviously, we're not doing snapshots. We're doing something else. And how do we do this? Now, what I want to do is I want to look at what a traditional storage system's architecture is. If you think of a traditional storage system, the idea is that the system is designed around the volume, and the volume as a container of data. So everything is centered around the volume. A volume basically stores data by creating allocations of space on underlying media and then keeping in a mapping structure on where the data lives. Now, if you look at this picture, it's pretty obvious what a snapshot is. A snapshot is really just a copy of that mapping information that is saved so that you can actually go back and find that point in time in the past. Now, this is not what we do. What we do is we basically change the way a storage system is constructed. Instead of having a volume-centric view of the world, we basically have a data-centric view of the world. And in a data-centric view of the world, what we do is we record IOs. We record every update to the system in a database. And when we record the IO, what we record is the time we saw the IO, the container to which the IO is going, the offset to which the IO was targeted within the container or the volume, and a reference to the data that we received on that IO. Now, if you keep this in a database, it becomes very obvious how we do backdating. All we need to do backdating to any point in the past is generate a query into this database so that you can actually get back to the data at any point in time in the past. Now, why is backdating interesting? You heard Mike's comments about how customers actually use this for recovery at very fine granularity. You heard about the issues about ransomware and how ransomware locks up data and actually getting back to the data. We've had, since we started shipping, we've had at least 2 customers who've had cases where the data was attacked and locked up by ransomware or malware, and they've had to use backdating to do the recovery. The first was a development shop. This is a company that actually does software for network systems. This is a company that has 60 developers. They use Atlassian Bitbucket as a main configuration data store. Their configuration data store was attacked, and the data store was corrupted. When they looked at their traditional backup, they found that the last backup was from 22 hours ago. So they were doing nightly backups, and by the time they discovered the problem, they found that the backup was 22 hours ago. Now, if you think of what is the cost to the company of the work of 60 developers over a full working day, you can understand the value of being able to recover at very fine granularity. We were able to use backdating to recover this company to the last minute. From the point of them calling support to the point they were fully back up and running was 30 minutes. The other case is a police department in New England called the Barnstaple Police Department. They were the victim of a successful ransomware attack where their data was locked up, their operations were stopped. They called in to our support. We were able to recover the data within a few seconds. They lost a few seconds worth of data. Barnstaple has become a great spokesman for Reduxio. We have a video that we have created with Barnstaple. There's a case study that discusses how we use backdating to recover their environment after a ransomware attack. Okay, now I'd like to move on from backdating to the next value, which is delivering flash performance to all your applications. Now, how do we do that? Now, if you think of storage unfortunately has to do 2 things. Storage actually has to serve data and store data. Now, customers, all of us, we don't like to pay a lot of money when it comes to actually dealing with data that we need to store. We just want to keep it somewhere and forget about it. However, we're willing to pay a premium, and media that is capable of serving data at very high speed costs more. So building a storage system which has only one type of media automatically puts you at a disadvantage, because either you get a storage system that's not very good at serving data, or you're overpaying for a system that needs to store data. And what we have done is we built a system that is optimized both for serving data and storing data by building a hybrid system. And what makes a hybrid unique is our tiering architecture. We basically do not do post-process tiering, which is what is being traditionally done in storage systems that are hybrids. We basically have come up with a unique tiering architecture that allows us to tier between different types of media at a very fast rate, at very fine granularity. And the tiering is not post-process, it's not on a schedule, it is continuous. It basically runs all the time, and it's adaptive to changes in workloads. Now, This tiering engine allows us to do deduping compression inline globally on a system that actually has multiple tiers. So we're the only hybrid system in the market, that uses a combination of media types that can actually do inline real-time global deduping compression. Now, why is inline global real-time deduping compression important? Let's look at what is the most valuable resource on your system. The most valuable resource on your system is your primary media, which is serving your data. Now, by having real-time deduping compression, we're able to actually optimize both your cache and your primary tier, which is flash, so that more of your working set basically sits in the flash or in your primary media. Now, in a virtualization environment, this means that in many cases, your entire virtualization workload or working set is sitting and is being served out of the memory cache, because in virtualization workloads, you actually get very good dedupe savings. Now, the second benefit of this is it's global. Now, if you have many volumes, we basically have a dedupe that works across all your volumes, so there's higher chance of actually finding duplicates. Now, think of your environments where you have virtualization or VDI, where this workload might be distributed on multiple volumes, and the ability to go find duplicates across all volumes basically provides you much more savings and also much more performance, because you're now dealing with data that's all sitting on the primary tiers of storage you have. The third benefit is one of performance. You get much better performance because the system is now dealing with less data all over. When data is moved from cache into the primary tier, it's dealing with deduping compressed data. When it moves from the flash tier into the disk tier, it's still dealing with deduping compressed data. So you end up with a system that basically gives you great performance, has a very small footprint, physical footprint for data, and provides great savings across multiple workloads. Okay, so what is the product we have? The product we have is an array. It's called the 86550. It has a unique data management capability that we have, which we call backdating. We have TRX, which is our dynamic data placement, which I just discussed, and NoDupe, which is our global data reduction. The last thing is StoreSense. Every system basically connects back into a cloud service, which basically allows us to monitor the system continuously. It basically, if there's an issue on the system, we know about it typically before the customer knows about it, before you would know about it. In many cases, this has been a lifesaver for customers. We've had at least 2 cases where we've actually prevented data center shutdowns because our system reported the issue, the overtemp issue, back to us before the customer knew about it. One customer basically had a case where the system reported overtemp. We called them. They basically said it was impossible that the data center could have a problem because they had other monitoring for the data center. And unfortunately, what they found was the grid that they used for the air conditioning was also the grid on which the monitoring system was connected to. Therefore, when the reason the air conditioning went down was because the grid failed, and it also took down the monitoring system. So by having our system call us, we were able to tell them about the overtemp condition, which would have caused the data center to shut down.
Jacob?
Okay, so the last one is about what we have done with virtualization. We today provide a vCenter plugin, which basically allows you to do backdating from within your vCenter. We also have complete VAI integration, and we validated this across all the primary enterprise applications that you're familiar with: Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL, VDI environments, both from Microsoft and from VMware, and of course, the VMware hypervisor and Hyper-V. And of course, Mike mentioned this right at the beginning of the presentation. We won the VMworld Best of Show in the cloud and virtualization category at the VMworld 2015. This was the show where we launched our product, so it was actually quite nice that we launched the product in the morning and we won this award in the evening. And last year we were selected as Product of the Year by the Storage Magazine. That's all I have.
Jacob, thank you for that. And we're ready to open it up to our audience for questions.
Mike,
Jacob, maybe one question that just came through here. I'm sorry, Jacob. You mentioned that Reduxio keeps all the disk I/O information on a single database, so it knows where to restore from. How is that database actually protected?
So when I say a database, it's conceptually a database. It's conceptually a database because the way we query the database to get the information about retrieving the data. But this is a proprietary data structure that we've created that allows us to track these IOs and retrieve data from any point in the past at very high speeds. And the way we protect that database is there's two levels of protection. The first level is to understand if we have data integrity issues, right? Which is if there's a problem with the database, we want to know that we're not returning junk data. And that's done through basically keeping checksums on every part of the database. The second thing is against corruptions on disk, which is there might be a problem on the media. And for that, we're actually protected against any two drives returning junk data, which is we have the ability to get data from two drives. We detect the fact that the data that was returned is not good data because our checksum tells us it's not good data, and then we're able to reconstruct the data from the remaining drives. So the database is very well protected. In fact, the database sits on the flash tier, which has a very high bit error rate tolerance, and the recommended protection for that level of bit error rate tolerance is only one drive. We added a second drive just because we want to be doubly sure that this would never get corrupted.
Okay. Jacob, next question is, can you draw a distinction between the commonly known concept of continuous data protection and Reduxio's backdating feature?
Oh, absolutely. So if you think of CDP was a better backup. So if you think of how CDP is done, you have typically an agent inside a protected server, and the agent is basically splitting IOs from as it comes to the primary storage and is basically sending it to secondary storage. Now the challenge here is because you assume that the secondary storage device is slower than the primary storage, you of course cannot keep sending IOs at the same rate to the primary storage device and the secondary storage device. So there is some kind of journaling or coalescing of IOs that's being done on the host side before it's being sent to the CDP device. There are other models, but in all cases, the idea is that CDP protection is provided by a completely separate device. Now, the thing about Reduxio is you have one box, which is your primary storage. It's high-performance primary storage. We benchmarked this at 130,000 IOs on a 1 terabyte working set, 70/30 read-write on 8K, completely random at half a millisecond latency. And this is not just our numbers. ESG did a paper on us, they did a lab report on us, and these numbers come from their lab report. So you have a primary storage system which basically can be used for your application, and we provide this level of protection built into the primary storage as opposed to requiring a separate application. So that's what I think is the main difference between CDP and what we provide.
Right. One other question that came up, of course, today Reduxio sells an appliance, an array that is on-premise, but of course there's the consideration of moving apps to environments like AWS. So can you provide a little insight on, drawing a distinction between cloud versus on-premise, and then from a cloud perspective, both public versus private, in terms of what Reduxio does?
Yeah, so customers have to make customers based on the type of workload they have might choose to have their applications on-premise or in the cloud, and there are benefits to having your applications on-premise. There are some applications that can be in the cloud. And I think the strategy of Reduxio, and I think this is inherent to our the metadata architecture I showed you, is this idea of separation of the volume, which is the endpoint for data, and where the data resides. And this is something that, we have not got into a lot of details in this discussion, but what we will provide as we move forward is enable our customers to seamlessly move data between on-premise data centers and the cloud, depending upon what their requirements are and depending upon the application requirements. So that's where we're going. There is a place for on-premise storage. There is a place for cloud storage, cloud infrastructure, and on-premise infrastructure. And if you read what every analyst says about what infrastructure in the future is going to look like, it's going to be hybrid. It's going to be hybrid of different types of clouds, different types of on-premise infrastructure. And what we want to do is provide a seamless layer that basically connects all this into a single entity. So that's where we're going. That's what Reduxio is going to be doing.